So we'll start sewing by preparing our pockets. So we'll take the inner pocket, which is the smaller pocket piece, and we want to press the sides in by 1/4 inch. Because this is a pocket, it's okay if our 1/4 inch isn't exactly 100% totally perfect. This isn't like quilting where it really matters to line things up. So one way to do this is just to kind of roll it over a tiny bit, eyeball it, and then press it, being careful not to steam your own fingers. I'm going to do that to both sides of this pocket. If you're really wanting to be accurate, there are a couple different things you can do. For the top now, I'm going to fold over both the top and the bottom. So, take a ruler. I have this handy ruler that lets me slide the slide to the correct amount, so I can see here that this distance, there we go, this distance, measure that between the points, actually is there, 1/4 inch, so you can use that. If you have tools that kind of let you be an extra set of hands, that's another way to, without having 3 hands, I can kind of hold this in place, while I measure things, and then switch to ironing. That's another way to let you get things in there without worrying about steaming your fingers. Can hold that down while I make sure that I have this at 1/4 inch. If you do need to get a really accurate seam, I find the best way to do this is to actually stitch a line of stitching at the 1/4 inch mark, and then when you fold, it's easy to fold exactly on that line of stitching. So that's my trick, a little tip I will impart to you for getting a perfectly accurate 1/4 inch seam when you need to fold such a thing. Again, because this is just a pocket, I'm going to kind of cheat my way, and because it doesn't matter if it's totally perfect. So now that I have all 4 sides folded in, I'm going to take the top side and fold it over once more, the same 1/4 inch distance that I folded the last time, and that's going to give me a perfectly finished edge on the top of this pocket. So now I want to stitch down this top part of the pocket, the inner pocket, which is the part that we folded and pressed twice. So I'm going to stitch it, somewhere in the middle of this fold. So I have it now. This top is finished. The seam is all finished, and we can attach this to our lining. To sew the fully lined small pocket, we want to take the 2 pieces of fabric, the 2 small pocket pieces of fabric, and right sides together. We're going to sew along the entire outer edge, leaving a several inch gap, like 3 inch gap, will make this, we're gonna be turning the fabric right side out through that gap. So, you wanna leave it large enough that you can easily turn things out, which is why I pick 3 inches. So I'm using a 1/4 inch foot for a 1/4 inch seam. Get to the edge and rotate. And here, when I'm back to the 4th edge, you know, you can measure this exactly, or you can just eyeball it. Probably good enough. After stitching it, I turned it right side out through the gap that I can't even find now, through the gap that I left in the sides. There we go. Through the gap that we left on the side, turned it right side out, and then went ahead and just pressed it flat. So this rectangle, you can see the same finished on both sides, and we can go ahead and treat it now just like we treat the small pocket for the simple instructions. Here, if we take the back lining, you can see where I have before, when we traced out the placement line for our small pocket. I'm going to align this with the placement line and go ahead and grab a couple pins to pin it in place. You can see that because I wasn't super careful about my folds for folding in a 1/4 inch, that I'm sitting a little bit inside of the placement lines. That's okay. Again, this is just a pocket. This isn't what you would want to do if you are working on a garment where you need to worry about fit, or a quilt where, you know, it's going to make your pattern pieces not line up. But since this is just the inner pocket, just wanted to show you that it's okay to not be completely, totally worried about perfection for this part of the sewing. So I'm gonna start at the top and sew my way down to secure the pocket, the small pocket, to the inside. One thing that you can do to help secure these upper edges, where it's this upper edge that will receive strain, you know, as you get in and out of the pocket, it's going to pull on that point. So you can either just, I'll show you a couple different things you can do. Just start and backstitch. You can even go back and forth several times. That will help secure this. You know, backstitching more than you would starting and stopping a normal seam. So I'm going to sew with my needle in the down position. I'm going to stitch this on. And as I get to pins, take them out. And here, I'm going to stop when I am, you know, I'm sewing this with an edge stitch, which is less than a 1/4 inch, because I want it to make sure that I'm catching the fold, that I'm actually sewing through the fold. And you know, so I'm doing somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. It's definitely you know, not a whole 1/4 inch, but maybe not quite as delicate as 1/8 of an inch. You can, for edge stitching, you can actually stitch right on the edge. That's another way to do it if that's the aesthetic you like. You can, you know, just watch really carefully and stitch it so you are exactly right on the very edge of the fabric. That's maybe a more sort of traditional edge stitch. And then the other way that you can secure the edge of your pocket is stitch to the top, then rotate it stitch out, I don't know, 2 or 3 stitches, and then rotate it again and complete that triangle by stitching those, you know, 3 or 4 stitches to get back to the edge of the seam. So you can see what we end up with if we do that triangle method where we stitched all the way to the top of the pocket. We stitched, you know, towards the inside of the pocket a couple stitches and then back down on the diagonal. We have this nice little triangle of stitching that's going to be, you know, really strong for when you're getting in and out of the pockets and torquing on that. You can see that this is what it looks like if we do an edge stitch, which is, you know, kind of as close to the edge as you can easily stitch. But if that is not a comfortable way for you to stitch, if you don't feel like your skills are up to it, it's totally okay to just stitch, you know, something like a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. Doesn't need to be, you know, it's not quite as hard to do something that's not quite so close to the edge. The only trick is that you want to make sure that you are stitching a smaller distance in from the edge than the amount that you did your fold, so that, you know, your fabric is actually caught all the way through and on by this stitching line, that the fold, you know, you can see all of the fabric is successfully caught of that folded fabric in that line of stitching. So that is now our finished inside pocket is now stitched down, and what we want to do is to sew the lines of stitching that will be our pen holders. The final thing that we want to do on this pocket is to go ahead and stitch a line of stitching here across the, you know, small pocket stitch lines. And these are where, you know, we're just going to sew a straight line of stitching so that we can then use this to sort of tuck pencils and pens into that part of the pocket.